Yeah, taxation is another area where we have practical application of price elasticity of demand. In other words, we are saying whenever you are taxing, you are imposing taxes, you have to look at price elasticity of demand. So, practical application of price elasticity of demand is also seen in the taxation aspect. And this taxation, there is no any other authority that has powers to tax. Taxation is basically done by government. So whenever your government wants to tax, it has to look at the price elasticity of demand, where it is going to tax. So we say this is done by government. That is the first thing that you have to know, that taxes are usually carried out or imposed by government, not individuals, but government is the one which imposes taxes. But before it imposes these taxes, it has to be very careful with the price elasticity of demand. When they are imposing taxes, it is important to look at these two aspects: inelastic demand and elastic demand. Inelastic demand and elastic demand, they are very, very important when you are imposing the taxes. What do we do? Government imposes two taxes. We have two taxes. We have what we call the direct tax and the indirect taxes. Direct taxes are imposed on someone's income or the property, the company income or individual's income. That's where the direct taxes are imposed. Elasticity of demand, price elasticity of demand may not concern so much of this, but we concern ourselves with the indirect taxes. Indirect taxes are imposed on commodities, on services and goods that a person or an individual buys. So whenever you talk of government imposing taxes, that is taxation, we are looking at the indirect taxes. What happens with the indirect taxes is that they are imposed on the commodities which you are going to buy. It is imposed on the commodities which you are going to buy. Now, these commodities which you are going to buy, whenever tax is imposed, the price tends to go up, tends to increase from what it has been to new price. For example, if you are buying a kilo of sugar at 1,000 shillings, that is the cost of the sugar, then plus the tax say of 200 shillings. The effect of this is the sugar to cost 1,200, where the 200 is the tax and the 1,000 is the cost of the sugar. So when you impose this indirect tax, by the way, the question comes, why do we call them indirect? Because the one paying the tax may not know that he or she is paying tax, because it is within the cost of the product. You cannot know. If you went to the shop and you found out that the sugar costs 1,200, it may be very difficult for you to know that the 200 is a tax. And many times when we are paying these taxes, we don't get to know that this price has so much tax. That's why we call them indirect. They are not seen, they are not known. The buyer just knows that the sugar costs this. So when government is imposing taxes, it looks at the price elasticity of demand. When the price elasticity of demand is elastic, it means that you are going to increase the price. And we say that with the elastic demand, a slight increase in the price reduces demand. Therefore, it has to know that this commodity has elastic demand or inelastic demand. So, indirect taxes tend to increase the price of the commodities. We have already mentioned that whenever taxes are imposed, indirect taxes are imposed, the prices go up. And so, government has to know that I'm imposing this tax, and this is going to happen to my this is going to happen to the consumers. Now the question is, what is the intention of the government to impose these taxes? We have various reasons why taxes are imposed and how they are imposed. But government usually looks at two things. Either it is imposing these taxes to raise revenue. Like we say, government revenue wants to get money so that it can spend on the activities of the economy. So it might be that government is imposing taxes. This is done by the government. One, to raise revenue. Government revenue. In fact, we can just put it very direct, to raise government revenue. It imposes taxes to raise government revenue. If not that, it can impose taxes to discourage consumption of particular goods or services. So the purpose of imposing taxes is either government wants to raise its revenue, it wants to raise government revenue, or it wants to discourage consumption of particular goods. Before it makes a decision on how much to impose on the commodity, it has to look at the elasticity of demand or the price elasticity of demand. Is your intention to raise revenue? On which commodities can I impose taxes? Because if you impose them on commodities which have elastic demand and your purpose is to raise revenue, then you are not going to gain. So we look at with this we say here, if the purpose is to raise government revenue, it is going to impose taxes on commodities which have inelastic demand. Why? Because these ones, even if you increase the price, the demand will not be much affected. So this one, if the purpose of the government imposition of the tax is to raise government revenue, then it has to look at those commodities whose demand is inelastic, whose price elasticity of demand is inelastic. That is when it is going to raise more revenue, because it's a big increase in the price will not discourage or reduce so much the quantity demanded, and that means government will be able to raise more revenue. If the government imposes high taxes on commodities which are having elastic demand, that means a slight increase in the price, like you have seen that sugar was 1,000 and then it went to 1,200. By increasing by that 200 shillings, the demand can disappear or can reduce greatly, and the purpose of revenue will not be there. So it has to go for commodities which have inelastic demand, such that raising the price due to taxation will not affect it in a big way in the demand of the commodities. So if government wants to raise revenue, it will go to commodities that have inelastic demand. And which commodities have inelastic demand? The commodities that have inelastic demand, we have fuel, we have cigarettes, sometimes we call them cigars, the cigars, then beer. These have inelastic demand. So if government wants to raise revenue, it will impose very high taxes on these, and the taxes will not be affected, and will not affect demand. They will not affect demand so much. Why? Because there is inelastic demand. The taxes will not be, they will not affect the demand greatly. Why? Because of inelastic demand. So, if the purpose is to raise government revenue, it has to look at those commodities which have inelastic demand, and that's when to get a lot of revenue. Why? Because you increase the price greatly, and the reduction in demand will not be much affected, and that's what it will do. So, practical application of price elasticity of demand is basically seen in this aspect of inelastic demand. Now, what happens to this one? We have seen this one is inelastic demand. This one is inelastic demand. Now, if the government intention is to discourage consumption of commodities, it doesn't want people to consume certain commodities, it will look at the elasticity. For this inelastic demand, if the intention is to discourage consumption, they will not be discouraged. You increase the price, people still buy. There will be a reduction, but very small. But if your intention is to say this commodity should be abandoned, people should stop consuming such commodities, then it will have to impose taxes on commodities with elastic demand. You look at the commodities that have elastic demand and impose taxes. So if the purpose, that is taxation, if the purpose is to increase revenue, tax revenue, inelastic demand. If the purpose is to discourage consumption of certain commodities, then you look at elastic demand. That is the practical application. If it does not do this, then there will be problems within the economy. If high taxes are put on these commodities, say we want people to stop taking cigarettes or to take beer, let us increase taxes. You find people continue taking because it is a habitual. See, that is their habit. They are addicted to that. They cannot just live. People have bought the vehicles. They have them. They will not stop buying fuel because they need to move. However expensive fuel may be, you still find people buying the fuel. So because of that, it will not get the purpose if it is to discourage. People will continue buying, but the prices will increase. But if it wants to raise revenue and puts a high tax on elastic demand commodities, then you will find people abandoning the commodities. For example, if you woke up and say, I'm going to put high taxes on milk, milk is not, they don't take it to be essential. It is an important diet, but it is not so essential. Some people can do with the milk. So if a liter has been costing 1,000 shillings of milk, and you say, I want to raise more revenue from milk sales, and I'm going to put 600 shillings per liter, and it goes to 1,600, a person who has been buying 2 liters may go for half, or may even totally abandon abandon milk. This business of saying it is nutritious, it is so good, it goes possibly to those countries whose people understand so much these aspects. But if you do it in Africa here, people are just going to abandon milk and just take black tea or take alternatives. They can say, no, we can get those values from milk, we can get them from other foodstuffs, and they abandon the milk. You impose high taxes on meat, you impose high taxes on eggs, people are just going to abandon them. So if your purpose is to discourage the consumption of eggs, then put there very high tax, people will abandon and you achieve what you want. But if it is something that has inelastic demand, you are not going to succeed with this purpose for this purpose, or this purpose for this purpose. So it is important for government, when it is carrying out taxation, to consider the practical application, the practical relevance of price elasticity of demand. Yeah, we are still looking at the purposes of that. Now, with the taxation, as we have said, with the taxation, we are yet to see more, to look at more closely or keenly when we come to the public finance topic. We are going to look at the effects, how the tax, when it is imposed, how do they share? Because when tax is imposed, there is that what we call shifting of the tax. That is the incidence of the tax. Where does it finally rest? And that still goes to elasticity, but we shall expound on that when we come to public finance, to see that when this very tax of inelastic demand is imposed, how is it shared between the producer and the consumer? That is still, we shall consider elasticity. That's why we say that it is very, very important for people to understand very well this price seal, because these aspects will continue in various topics. So you need to master, understand it well, such that you don't get problems in interpreting these aspects. Number 3, that is the practical application of price elasticity of demand. Number 3 we have is protection against consumer exploitation. 3 is protection against consumer exploitation. Consumer exploitation. That's another factor which has to be considered when you're looking at the practical application of price elasticity of demand. This occurs with public utilities. But we have what we call public utilities. Public utilities. Public utilities. These are services that the public needs, the public uses. They are very vital in the day-to-day lives of the people. And usually, if you leave these things in government hands, that is the first thing. You have to make sure you protect the consumers. Otherwise, they will be exploited. These government utilities, the public utilities, are very necessary in society. And so, whenever you are imposing taxes, for example, let's first look at the example. Electricity is a public utility. Water. In some countries, like those European countries, those America and others, another public utility is gas. Is gas. Gas is very, very important. These are utilities. And so, when you are imposing a tax, you have to know what is this nature of the commodity. It is a utility, very essential to the consumers. So you don't impose high taxes on them. In most cases, such commodities have inelastic demand, yes. But if the government is not considerate and say, oh, we want to raise more money and we have to put high taxes on these commodities, then the prices are going to increase, and these are public utilities, things that help society. People usually use these facilities. They need them in their day-to-day lives. And so government has to be very careful that when it is imposing taxes, despite the fact that electricity has inelastic demand, it is a utility. You have to protect the consumer against the exploitation. With electricity, even if you increase the rate from 400 shillings per unit to 1,300 per unit, people still need electricity and they will buy it, but you are affecting their consumption, you are affecting their standard of living. So government has to consider that yes, these commodities have inelastic demand, but you have to protect the consumers against the exploitation. So it will put low prices on these utilities, on these commodities which have inelastic demand, but they are utilities. They are called utilities, public utilities. That's why in most countries, these three aspects are usually left in government hands, where taxes will be very low on them. Government, yes, will collect taxes from them, but will keep the taxes very low because of their importance. If you leave it in private hands, you will be compelled, if you don't tax heavily, the private sector will decide to impose high prices on the commodities. So that's why in most cases, you find the government, even if it is a free market economy, they will be in charge of these aspects, these services, that is electricity, water, and gas. Gas, when we talk about gas in Uganda, some people may not take it very seriously. Say gas, some people have never even used the gas, they even don't know how gas is used. But in Europe, in those countries, especially those ones which have a winter, during winter, they use gas within their homes to warm their houses. So gas is very important. If it is off, then people are going to die in their houses, especially during winter. So it is something that is very, very crucial, and government wouldn't wish to put very high taxes on such utilities. So that is the protection of the consumer against exploitation. So we use the price elasticity of demand. When it is inelastic, I've said with these public utilities, they have inelastic demand. But because we want protection of the consumer, the taxes must be low. You don't go with the first statement you have made that goods with inelastic demand, you impose high taxes. This time we say yes, it has inelastic demand, but it is very crucial. It is a utility, so taxes should be low, and that should come to government assessment. Similarly, number 4 is government subsidies. Government subsidies. And we said government subsidies. This is where government pays part of the cost of the product so as to reduce its price, either for consumption or for production. what do we say? Production and consumption. Government can subsidize the consumer. So when you subsidize the consumer, you want to lower the price for his product. You subsidize. And when you subsidize for production, you want to lower the cost of producing that product. And when you lower the cost of producing the product, that means the price of that commodity on the market is going to be low. So government can decide where to subsidize. Should we subsidize, leave the producers to produce at their cost, and we subsidize the consumer, or we subsidize production so that the consumer finds the price low? That one is through government policy. But before you look at where to subsidize, you have to look at the elasticity, price elasticity of demand. Will it affect production, consumption so much so that you leave the producers to produce at their cost? When they bring the commodities to the market, you realize that the price will be high. You subsidize the consumer. Or you don't go to the consumer, you just go to the producer and you say, now you are going to produce this bar of soap at a cost of 400, at a soap 4,000. That will be the cost of producing that soap. But as government, let us subsidize your soap production by 1,500. Now, what the producer is going to do is to produce this bar of soap at 2,500. And that means he will be selling it at a lower price than the cost of production. Why? The cost of production, because the seller will not add on this. The government will have subsidized him. So what the seller or the producer is incurring is 2,500, and that is what is going to be the price of the soap. So it will be lower. So you have subsidized the production. Or you say no, let it be produced at 4,000, and when it comes to the market, the government can subsidize by 1,500 the consumer. So here you're subsidizing consumption or production. Any subsidy that is given to the consumer or the producer is after considering the price elasticity of demand. Commodities that have inelastic demand, this is what we normally conclude. Commodities that have inelastic demand. If they have inelastic demand, we say no subsidy. Elastic demand, you subsidize. So commodities that have inelastic demand, there's no need. How do you go and start subsidizing cigarettes? How do you go to subsidize beer? There's no need to subsidize. Leave them to consume because they can be consumed at that price. That's why sometimes we find that in some governments, especially in Africa, you'll find rare cases where government subsidizes fuel. People can cry, please government subsidize, you should do it. It is very difficult to find government subsidizing fuel. Why? Because they know it has inelastic demand. Much as you cry, let it be subsidized, let us, it will not, if they do it, it will not be for a long time. Why? It has inelastic demand. And you see fuel, sometimes it is used not necessarily for production of commodities that help people. You may find that when it is a subsidy, they can give the subsidy of fuel to industries or industrial production, selected industrial products. Some of the, if you lower the price or subsidize it, people are going to get fuel, drive and move to their luxurious lives and so on, even cause more accidents because vehicles are moving, everybody can drive because the fuel has been subsidized. So it's a rare case that you find fuel being subsidized. If it is having inelastic demand, the decision, practical application is that don't subsidize, don't lower the cost, either at production or at consumption, if the commodity has inelastic demand. But if the commodity has elastic demand, that's where government will come in to say, now, let us subsidize, lower the price, increase the demand for it, or the consumption for it, or expand on the production of that commodity because it has elastic demand. So that's another practical application of price elasticity of demand, government subsidies. So that's why sometimes government, when it is taking policies, you may ask, is this policy correct? Is it properly taken? Was it supposed to be done like that? The consideration is this. That's why if you are talking to some individuals, they will say, but this government isn't considering it. Fuel is used by so many people, and government cannot come up and subsidize. Yes, it looks good to subsidize, but when you subsidize the fuel, it's not only going to be used for vehicles that are carrying matoke, that are carrying posho from the village to the markets. No. This fuel, once you subsidize it, people are going to use the fuel for various luxurious, self-satisfying activities. That's why government is very rare. But if it comes to industries, if industries are using so much of this fuel, it can subsidize for industrial production. If there is a way it can identify and you know that this price, this commodity is very important, we need to produce it and we need to subsidize the producers, and these producers are using fuel, then they can subsidize for them. But it cannot be general. It is very rare that it will be general. So that is another practical application which I'm sure is very clear to all of us who are doing the economics as a subject. Then another practical application we have is price discrimination. Price discrimination. And we say this is commonly used by monopolists. Those who produce commodities, and the commodities they produce have no close substitutes, commonly used by monopolists. And the monopoly uses it when it is going to carry out price discrimination. It has to consider, because price discrimination means what? PD. Price discrimination is selling similar commodities in different markets at different prices. That's what we call price discrimination. Selling similar commodities in different markets at different prices. That's what we call price discrimination. Markets may be different by location or different by individuals. But if you look at markets different, markets being different by location, we are looking at two places. We have place A and we have place B. So when price discrimination is to take place, in place A, price elasticity of demand, the price elasticity of demand is inelastic. And price B, market B, price elasticity of demand is elastic. In A, the price elasticity of demand is inelastic. In B, price elasticity of demand is elastic. If I can give an example, if you go to areas where people are generally rich, income is high, the income distribution in that area is high, people generally are rich, the price elasticity of demand in such an area tends to be inelastic. Then areas where price elasticity of demand, where generally the income is low, poor people who live in slums, the price elasticity of demand is elastic. Now, for price discrimination to be successful, what this person is going to do is going to charge high prices, increase price for the same commodity, increase price in that market highly, because the elasticity is inelastic. And for the commodities where, for the market where the price elasticity of demand is elastic, he's going to lower the price. Why is he lowering the price? We are saying in economics, he's going to increase the price here to enjoy profit maximization. Profit maximization. And he is going to enjoy, to lower the price in this market, in market B where it is elastic, to have sales maximization. Sales maximization. So he's going to divide the markets into two and carries out price discrimination. But before this price discrimination is carried out, he has to consider the price elasticity of demand. He will say, this area B, people living there are very rich. They are rich people. They have the money. They have the incomes. So, even if I increase the price, for example, if you increase the price in this market A, assuming you are the only producer of sugar, and you are selling sugar in two markets, a very rich area, that's the location, very rich area where price elasticity of demand is inelastic, you are going to have inelastic demand. So the sugar which has been 4,000, what you do in market A is to increase it to 6,000. People will complain, but they will continue buying. If there is a reduction, there will be just a slight reduction, 4,000 to 6,000. In the market A where it is inelastic, you are going to have more sales, more income, because the demand may reduce from 20 kilograms to 18. Whereas in an area where the people are poor in that location, you don't increase the price. Instead, you say the price of sugar, which has been 4,000, I've decided to sell it 3,700 or 800. You are going to reduce it by this. And when you reduce it by this, you are going to have more people buying the sugar. And so you are going to have sales maximization, increasing the price of, increasing the sales of the consumer. Whereas here, you are going to have people buying at that high price. So, price discrimination, before it is carried out, you have to know the price elasticity of demand in the two markets that you are going to discriminate from. And you have to know that this market has price elastic demand and this market has price inelastic demand. And that will help you to get more revenue. And this is what happens in price discrimination. So, that's the first one which we have looked at. Number 5 which is also number 6, which is also under price discriminate and price elasticity of demand is number 6 is devaluation. Devaluation is another way we can have practical practical application of the price elasticity of demand. Devaluation is another way. We have looked at those others, but devaluation. What is devaluation is what we are going to look at next.